So Jim Sterling is one of my favourite YouTubers. He's also one of the most prominent leftist YouTubers on the platform, having over 900,000 subs. Now you guys seem to enjoy my series where I talked about the toxic politics of the gaming community and talked about narratives that were parroted by people on, I guess, the far right to people more in the centre right and then people more on the centre left. So I of course had videos talking about the quartering, I had a video talking about the Act Man, and I had a video talking about Angry Joe. And what I use these three personalities to highlight is this toxic form of politics that exists in the gaming sphere on YouTube, where they push back against things like feminism, talk unironically about SJWs, ruining the gaming industry, pushing a forced agenda in all video games through their toxic politics according to them. Now these people also claim to care about diversity, but they want it done right. But of course we know from the reaction of these three straight white males is that they don't actually care about diversity, they don't want it, they just want things to stay as they are. And go back and watch those videos if you want to see how ridiculous their arguments often get. But knowing the gaming space online is dominated by people like the Quartering, it makes me happy to talk about someone like Jim Sterling, who's such a positive influence and is just as big as these three people I mentioned. So what I'm going to do in this video is break down one of Jim's videos talking about capitalism, talking about how effectively he links it to video games, and then talk about afterwards why we need more people like Jim Sterling and why it's such a positive thing he is so prominent on the YouTube space. So the video in question is called The Epic Brutality of Unchecked Capitalism. It came out about a year ago, but I still remembered it, so I thought I'd go back to it. And basically he is talking about how the Epic storefront burst onto the scene just because it had a ton of money and was basically picking up exclusives to challenge Steam. Not inherently a bad thing, but you'll see through the video how he links this to unregulated capitalism and why it's so damaging to the games industry. And one thing I give constant praise to Jim for is how he uses video games to really spell out issues that affect everything in your life. So first Jim outlines what Epic are doing.
It should be noted, and I've said this before, that what Epic's doing isn't exactly competitive. It's incredibly aggressive, but with a threadbare launcher and blatantly unfinished user experiences, Epic has been failing to provide a truly competitive service. This is why I don't trust Sweeney's altruism angle, the claims that they're doing this for the betterment of the PC market. It is instead strong-arming the game-buying public into using its service, simply because it has the money to skate on. Epic doesn't currently have to compete on any substantive level. All it has to do is keep on buying loyalty and starving the wider market of content. This is not offering competition in the fair sense of the word.
Jim then goes to talk about how some of the worst and most exploitative games companies in America actually get tax credits. So no matter how you react towards them, your taxes are actually funding them, no matter how awfully they treat the customers or their employees.
Corporations like Activision Blizzard are allowed to not only avoid paying any federal income tax thanks to offshore havens, but they get a refund. A fucking refund on the zero they pay, meaning chumps like you and me, we're effectively paying Activision's corporate welfare. How about that? You could actively boycott their products if you want, and Activision would still thrive at your fucking expense.
So you see what is so effective about Jim's videos there. So he's taking something like video games and he's taking something I guess all gamers can appreciate, that Activision is an exploitative company. They make way too much money and they publish the same stuff every year, relatively speaking. Mainly making their billions through Call of Duty, but of course other games once they acquired Blizzard. And of course it's pretty easy for most people to get behind that with a company like that, you don't want to be funding them through your taxes. If you choose to boycott their product, that should mean something if there is a free market. Now in this video, Jim also talks about Disney and companies like Disney that start buying up loads and loads of properties.
Equally alarming is Disney's buying up of Marvel, Lucasfilm and more recently Fox, giving one company total control of some of the medium's most influential and profitable properties. In theory, we have antitrust laws to stop outright monopolies from happening, but as we've seen with Disney and many other companies across many other industries, they can't stop companies from having so much power and influence. They might as well be a monopoly, especially when they have enough advantage to be able to raise prices, halt innovation, actively fuck customers over without any realistic fear of people switching brands.
So another company is Tencent from China, which has its hands in loads and loads of shares from across the gaming industry, from Ubisoft to Activision. But here Jim takes case studies everyone can recognise, everyone can see Disney buying all these properties, everyone can read about Tencent funding all these different things. And through grabbing onto this topic, he makes a broader point about capitalism, which is really effective.
The Jimquisition this year has focused on the wider picture, the socio-economic systems that allow game publishers to pull the kind of grotesque bullshit they pull. And unfortunately, if you wanna be mad at Epic's behaviour, you kinda have to be mad at a market free enough to allow this. Sad fact of the matter is, few game companies do things out of the kindness of their heart, because it's the nice or even right thing to do. It's nice to think they will.
So like what I was saying about Jim earlier, he ties this all back to this economic system. And basically what he says in this video is that you cannot be annoyed at these problems if you're not annoyed at the current economic system. Free market that is free enough and deregulated enough to allow this thing is of course something that is bad. So what Jim effectively does with videos like this and his content in general is take gamer rage and channel it into something constructive. Mainly he takes their problems and then gives them the real causes of it. So if you're mad about microtransactions ruining your games, if you're mad about your games being cut up and sold back to you as DLC, if you're mad about real gambling in gaming, your problem is with the overall economic system that allows them to do this. So then Jim goes on to show how this economic system allows these companies to get away with the worst things they do.
It's not right that EA buys and mangles and inevitably shuts down studio after studio, but it's free to do it. It's not right that Activision lays off 800 employees at the same time it boasts of record revenue, but it's free to do it. It's not right that Epic can starve Valve while offering little to no benefit for end-user customers, but in this market, it's free to do it. And if a shit-eating AAA video game publisher is free to do it, well, it's gonna fucking do it. Epic is also free to have a workplace environment resembling a shitty off-brand version of hell.
So that is all really effective, but one argument that Jim has started using that I actually like to use myself, especially now I've been in full-time employment for the last 7 months, is the gun to your head defense. Now this is stuff employers often say when they get allegations that workers are being pressured to work overtime. Now they will always say, I was not forcing anyone, we were not forcing anyone, no one has to work overtime, they are doing that because they want to. And of course, when you're working on something artistic, you have lots of people who love their work and they're very, very passionate about their job, so it's far easier to exploit them. And of course I don't need to say that the gaming industry, especially developing games, is extremely competitive, but like many jobs, you could fire that person and have someone else in just as qualified quite quickly. Because in a capitalist system, you're not valued as an individual, you are valued as a tool for your employer, and they want to squeeze as much profit out of you as they can. But Jim does a really good job at highlighting this power imbalance between the employer and the employees, so listen to this.
Epic Games is shielding itself with the gun-to-head defense, a defense that states nobody is forced to work long hours. Nobody has, in the most favorite form of the phrase, put a gun to anybody's head to make them do it. But as a powerful studio with control over people's jobs, Epic is in a coercive bargaining position that applies undue and unfair pressure to workers. We've covered this before, but to reiterate, coercion is a form of force if you're heavily implying someone's financial future, someone's career is on the line when you offer up-channel overtime for work that often cannot meet deadlines within normal hours, you're forcing them. And companies do really need to stop the gun-to-head defense, because if that's your baseline for decent business behavior, the simple fact that you're not using violence to get what you want, I find that a little bit disturbing.
So anyone who's worked has felt this power imbalance. For me personally, I felt like taking time off for being sick, and in my own job, that is actually taking my own holiday days, I have felt bad about that, and I have felt like my standing in the company might go down because they might not see me as a good worker because I'm taking sick days. Unfortunately, me starting full-time work actually matched up with me having serious neurological problems, which I still haven't got properly diagnosed and treated because I just don't want to take more days off work. And if anyone knows of stuff like neurological problems, it could be a multitude of things, so you'd probably have to go see a neurologist, you have to go get some scans, you might have to go see a chiropractor, you might have to go get some, physiotherapy. Even though I would be taking my own holiday days to do those things, because of the power dynamic in a company, I feel bad for doing that despite the fact that I shouldn't. I feel like my job could be at risk. So I feel like we can all relate to this point, and with Jim taking the really notorious crunch culture of the video game industry, he helps educate his viewers and educate general gamers about how bad this economic system is and how there is a lack of protection of these workers. And especially in American culture, there is sadly a lack of unions as well. And Jim shares my sentiment and points out to his audience that everything they are doing, all these awful stories of crunch, all these awful stories of mental breakdown, maybe workers suffering from PTSD and psychological problems because they're animating really violent scenes, this is all totally legal. Now, Jim leaves us with a nice little summary of how our economic system allows these game companies to get away with such shady practices.
Without organised workforces, without unions, without regulations keeping any of this in check, it's totally legal, it's completely allowable, it's a fucking free-for-all. The game industry has proven time and time again, if it can get away with it, it'll do it. And in a rampantly unchecked capitalistic system where making money is the only cardinal rule, game publishers have proven willing to destroy the art they publish, shut down quality developers, initiate mass layoffs as a form of self-reward, escape paying workers money they're owed, put gambling in their games, pay no fucking tax, and buy enough exclusives to staff competing storefronts while abusing human beings. And that's just a selection of what they get up to.
So that was just one video of many that Jim's done. He actually has done a specific one on capitalism, but lately, especially the last couple of years, he has made his videos increasingly political, but this doesn't feel like something that is shoehorned in, or he's just doing it because he feels like talking about politics more, because he takes what a lot of these YouTubers talk about. You often find Angry Joe, Yong Ye, The Quartering, and Axeman all talking about the same things as Jim Sterling, but what makes him so valuable as a creator and valuable as a political force is that instead of directing this anger towards things that don't matter, to the made-up SJW agenda, to the made-up leftists infiltrating the video game industry, Jim thankfully is there to show us the real problems. The problem is the economic system that exploits people who want to make art and treats them awfully, puts them through the worst conditions, puts them through sometimes 100-hour work weeks just to make an insane amount of money. So what you have is a lot of, say, under 40s, a lot of people who are extremely passionate about these things, want to create something they have loved playing. You take their love for this and you completely exploit them. And this isn't unique to video games, but again, I think there's a perfect storm in terms of these massive, massive companies taking this relatively new phenomenon in terms of an industry, taking its workforce and grinding them down, like I said, like every industry, to extract the maximum amount of profit from them. And what Jim does so well, in like the video I showed you, is point to a variety of different problems that the general gaming community, whatever their politics, will agree on is bad, and shows them that it's because of the economic system that these things are allowed, that this culture thrives. So even though you might deny it, you aren't necessarily angry at these companies specifically, you're angry at a system that allows these companies to operate in the way they do, so you are angry at capitalism. And it's refreshing to see a guy who does not put ads on his videos, who is very, very brazen about his politics, does not censor himself. It's very refreshing to see how popular he is. You know, a massive amount of Patreon subscriptions, a massive following on YouTube, extremely good views, whether he's talking about more broader political issues or more, I guess, frivolous stuff where he's just talking about his impressions of the game, gives me hope there is space on the online gaming scene and gaming community to have people like this to push back against the Quarterings and the Ackmans and their politics. You know, this hysteria about SJWs pushing their political agenda for everything. And they won't be happy until everything is so diverse you would not even recognise it. And they're here to ruin your favourite comics, movies and video games. So in summary, Jim Sterling is a very, very effective YouTuber and an effective tool for people to use to help educate maybe the uneducated or the ill-informed about the problems of capitalism through one of their favourite mediums. And if you become a fan of Jim, even though you might not consider yourself a political person, you might end up having very good constructive politics where you can recognise the flaws of the economic system that most of us are living under right now. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please like it, maybe subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 10k in the next couple of months and the support this year has been amazing. Hopefully I'm going to finally do it and it will be a really great milestone for me personally. So if you want to follow me on social media, follow me at The Tabernacle on Twitter, that is my main one, but also Facebook and Instagram. If you want to check me out on Reddit, follow my personal Reddit, u/TommyCahill1995, but also my subreddit where I post all my videos, so that is just r/forcavernacle. If you want to check out my Patreon, that is also in the description, along with my WordPress. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.